Hey there, Internet. Welcome to the Hard On Gear channel, where I discuss and review my used and abused knives and gear so that you know what is or isn't worth spending your hard-earned money on. If you want to help this channel grow, please consider subscribing and turning the notification bell on. Hit like on this video if you do like it. Send all of your Hard On Gear stories, pictures, and videos to the Hard On Gear Instagram or send them to hardongearchannel@gmail.com. Thanks, and on to the video. Here we are for the Hard On Gear channel's final 5. This is a response to an open tag from Metal Complex from a video he put out about a week ago. Metal Complex channel, it's actually one of the reasons this channel got started, as I kind of got into the idea of doing this tabletop review channel, except, well, my gear and my use of my gear is exactly opposite of Metal Complex's. So as much as I enjoy his format, his channel's a little bit more high-end, fancy. I'm talking $500, $600, $700, $8 knives. My knives are a little closer to the 100 to maybe 200 max range, with a lot of them being $30 to $50, $60 beaters. And they're mostly things that I use out in the woods so that I can pretty much beat them off anything without having to worry about really ruining a fancy, expensive knife that I'm going to cry about if I take a chip out of the blade. So I figured I'd respond to that open tag, and anyone who wants to check out his channel, please check out his content. And if you like fancier knives, he's definitely going to be able to cover that niche for you. So quick background on the final 5. Metal Complex broke his collection down into 5 categories, which is pretty general, I'd say, for most of us. So you've got your beater knives, you've got your budget EDC knives. So budget for me, I'll call it about $100 or lower Canadian. That's level to Metal Complex is 75 or under American. And so your higher end EDCs, so your production cold steel, Benchmade, Spydercos. Then you've got your gentleman's carries, a little bit fancier that you could tuck into a suit. And then your safe queens. So anything that's, well, for me, it's not going to be a super fancy knife that's so expensive I'm not going to use it for, the sake of not wanting to damage it and lose the value. For me, it's going to be something a little bit more of a sentimental value / something that I guess I would always want to hang on to just for the sake of it means enough to me that I'd want to keep that knife. So when Metal Complex did his video, he basically put all his knives out and on the spot made his decisions on what we're going to make each slot for his final 5. For me, I had to really stop and think, shit, do I even have a final 5? Do I have enough knives in certain categories to even justify doing this video? And I was able to figure that out, but basically in that process, I kind of picked out my final 5, but I'll walk you through the process a little bit as to why I picked the knives that I did. And if you're wondering about a weird little array of what we've got going on here, I'm just kind of a strange dude. I mostly work in the woods, wildfire, forestry, that kind of thing, kind of working into the military transition as the COVID's kind of slowed that down a bit. But for now, if you wanted to get a little more information on that, you can go to either my knife collection video or the channel introduction and get a little more of an idea as to what's going on here and as to why there's so much random shit on this table. So I'll start by kind of weaning out some of the things that I know aren't going to make the cut for any of these 5 slots because they're just, well, how about this? Right off the bat, let's look at one thing that we just do not want on this table and that irks me that it's near any other piece of gear that I've ever purchased. And the fact that I've bought it is just really the issue why I don't like it on the table. It makes me feel stupid and it lets you know the dumb decisions I've made, which basically this is what this channel is about, is how hard I am on my stuff and why you shouldn't do the things that I do. Bear Grylls, Gerber, I don't know who to blame for this. Let's just call it something that everyone knew shouldn't have happened, and we're just going to put it in the past. I just keep it there as kind of like a piece of gear that reminds me to stay humble and not get too excited about the choices I make in my life, because sometimes they're very stupid, like this. Not the greatest knife. It's not going to fit any of these categories, so I'm just going to put this over here in a pile. We can get rid of this old Rugo Mossy Oak knife. This was the first folding knife that I ever purchased myself when I was starting out forestry school. I just wanted the folding knife, and this was a basic cheap thing I found at Canadian Tire, which is our little general outdoor automotive budget store. It's not anything special. It's what is it, 440A? Yeah, 440A. Doesn't hold an edge worth a damn. The handle's built, it's actually kind of comfortable for how cheap it is. Maybe a $30 or $40 budget cheap EDC, but it's that would be the category this would fit in. And I've got much better budget EDCs now. This was an okay first pick, but it's absolute garbage compared to most of the knives any of us would purchase if we had actually spent 2 minutes to do our research. Ooh, and that actually gives me a little bit of room to take the cold steel bird and game out, because that's another one that was on my car visor, but I just kind of forgot about it. I put it behind me and didn't have any room for it anyway, so that worked out. So that's let's throw that in the mix. That's a little fixed blade, comes in this little sheath, Securex sheath. And I'll leave that for a second because we'll consider that even for maybe a budget EDC knife if you're talking maybe EDCing a fixed blade. You can see I've also got a couple multi-tools out, and I've also got some strange little things here just for the sake of throwing out like something odd. Like if you wanted a little variety in your life, I don't know why you'd want a Karambit for your final 5. So let's just even take that out right now. But that's the Smith & Wesson Karambit. It's a reverse Karambit, a little bit different, but yeah, this is just a fun little thing I bought for shits and giggles because it's 35 bucks, and I thought it would be fun to try out and do a little bit of Filipino martial arts type drills and shit with it, but it's not really good for anything practical, so we'll take it out of the mix. Same can be said for the Smith & Wesson Spear. Again, I haven't even got a chance to use this yet. I still plan on sharpening the other side of that dagger blade, but it's basically just a novelty tool for something to try out. You could say it's a survival tool, but I mean, if you're ever in a situation where this is going to be the make it or break it for you, you have fucked up in your planning, my friend. So we're just going to take this out of there. There is the ability to take off the pommel here and stick a little spear head or the shaft of a spear shaft. That's what I'm looking for. You could stick a piece of wood in there and turn this into a spear and then use it for throwing or slicing stuff or whatever. And yeah, keep an eye out for the video in the future where I will do something with this and play around with my little fun little spear tactics outside, which are pretty rough around the edges. And I'm going to make sure I do a lot of practice with my dummies before I accidentally cut my shin or something or slice a calf muscle with this. But yeah, keep an eye out for the video where I make an ass of myself with this thing. Next thing that we're taking out of here, because I just recently got it, I don't really like it. There's so many things here I could see me using before this for anything. Let me think here. Beater knife, no. It is kind of a rugged-ish little EDC knife, so this could fit into the beater category, because I mean, it's a frame lock, fairly well built. The M16 knives have a good reputation for being quite hard use, but I've got much better beaters than this, especially compared to a lot of the fixed blades on the table. Budget EDC, it could definitely fit that category as well. Oh, by the way, I'm going to speak in Canadian dollars most of the time, so the exchange rate's about 75 cents to the dollar for you guys. So if I say $100, just translate that to $70 US, if that makes sense to you, and use that ratio. So yeah, this was about $60, I think, $60 Canadian, and it's the M16 KSF. Yeah, M16 10 KSF. It's one of the smaller ones. I didn't mean to order it. You can watch me look like an idiot in the opening of that video when I unboxed this here not too long ago, and I've got a new one that should be in the mail today or Monday if it's not in yet. But that yeah, the M16, it could be beater, no. Budget EDC, it's not going to make the cut. High end, no. Gentleman's EDC, no. Way too tactical looking, not very gentlemanly of a knife, and it certainly is not a save queen. I'm going to beat the living hell out of this knife just to see what it can do, because I'm not going to use this for anything other than size comparisons, so we'll see what it can handle. But we're taking it out of the fold right now. Okay, I could have taken this out earlier again, but the other Smith & Wesson budget knife that's on here, another $30 piece. It's 8CR13 MOV blade. I believe all these are the Smith & Wesson budget knives, but this was a $30, $40 Smith & Wesson boot knife. It's a dagger blade, double-edged, and I bought this for a small game. Hard on Gear. Any Metal Complex fans are going to freak out when they see that stuff. But no, I am hard on my gear. So this is a knife I slip on my quiver for if I hit a small animal with an arrow, because I'm just starting to get into some small game hunting with that. And this will finish the job if I need to. It works pretty damn well for that, but that's really the only job it's used for. And if I had to narrow my knives down to 5, pretty much any other knife's going to do that. This just does a much better job. So it doesn't really serve any other purpose other than a budget EDC, which I don't recommend carrying something that's designed to only be a stabbing weapon as an EDC, because in Canada that's going to get you in trouble because it shows intent to use a knife for a weapon. In the States, don't worry about it. Obviously, you do what you want out there if your state laws allow you to. Look into your own laws in your own places. I'm not an expert on any of this stuff, and do not take my opinion for legal advice. Do your own research. Okay, so yeah, Smith & Wesson boot knife, you're not going to fit any of these categories. But you sure show those little dastardly tree rats who's boss. Okay, next. Just because I know it's not in that good a shape, this is a Ruko Solingen. It's a Buffalo brand, old German-made in Solingen, Germany, knife that I got from an old relative, and it's an old woods knife. It's a pretty damn sweet beater. You can find different versions of this on the secondary market for around $50 to $80, $90 Canadian at least. And this is a fairly decently well built knife, but the handle's got a little bit of wear and tear, so it's gonna fall apart on me eventually. It's got some sentimental value, but to be honest, the guy who gave it to me was a bag, so I could give a damn if I lost this or threw it in a river. I think it's a cool knife, and that's really the only value it has to me. So not really in the mix for the final 5. Not really. If it was still original, you could say this would be a gentleman's carry. You can get away gentleman's carrying something like this in rural Canada, I can tell you that much. Yeah, not reliable enough, little too big for EDC fixed blade use, and it's just not really my style. It's very traditional looking, and I fall much more into the modern synthetic tactical camp for as far as knife aesthetics go. Not really my jam. We're just going to pull that out of the selection. But a beautiful knife, though. If I did not make that clear, it's very, very nice. It's kind of a cool piece for me because I don't have any other vintage knives like this, so just kind of adds a little variety into my collection. Okay, so next, I guess, this is something else that we could have got rid of really early. This is an awesome knife and I say knife very lightly, this is a nice Bowie knife / small machete if you need to do some serious woodwork, like chop down a small tree. But this doesn't really even fit there. You could use this for the beater category, because when I first bought this, I've had this for 7 years. I used this on multiple out-of-province wildfire exports, chopping down trees and bunches that I really didn't need to do. But say if you're bored when you're doing pump duty, like kind of watching, make sure the pump has gas and all that kind of thing. There's not much else to do other than listen to the whine of the pump all day or chop shit down. I used this thing for about 3 years straight of just non-stop ridiculous use and abuse, chopping down trees for just, well, like say making bear spears, or like if we had to clear out places for wildfire and there was only like one axe, sometimes you're short on equipment, I would always volunteer to give up my tool to somebody else and just use this thing. So this thing only got sharpened after the first 3 years, and it still had a pretty mean edge on it, but 1095 carbon steel, the same as the Esee Izula, same as the, actually this is 1085, but more or less the same as the 1095 on the K-Bar 1211 and Esee Izula. But awesome knife, just too big for any of the categories. Definitely not an EDC, definitely not a safe queen, a beater, but just too big of a beater unless I'm zombie apocalypse weapon. Sure thing. Look at the size of this thing. What was I doing waiting that long to take this off the table? Friggin' meathead I am. Okay, so we got a lot of fixed blades. We still got a good portion of my small folding knife collection and 2 multi-tools. So maybe we'll look at that next. I mean, does that count? Multi-tool that's not really a Metal Complex's video that he had any multi-tools in there, but I figured I'd throw it in there just for the conversation piece. You could say for a budget EDC or for a beater knife, if you wanted to use the multi-tool for a variety of things, you get away with, say, this is a Byberry 21-in-1, by the way, not a Leatherman or a Gerber or anything else. But this is still, I think, fair. It's got a lot of good Amazon reviews, and I haven't put it to the test yet, but it's something I've thought about putting in here because that would, between all the different tools, the different knives, you could get away with a little bit more use. The Leatherman Squirt's in the mix as well for even say you could get away with a gentleman's carry, but I don't think I'm going to select either of these, but I just threw it out there for the conversation, and if anyone thinks they'd put an EDC as one of these, just let me know down in the comments. Budget EDC, maybe, if I wanted to use that as maybe carry 2 knives at once, carry my high-end EDC and my budget EDC, and at the same time, it gives me a multi-tool and a knife. But other than that, we'll take the multi-tools out of here. Oh, by the way, damn you, Metal Complex, for making me go and collect all my knives out of their random hiding places again. This is all kind of stuff that's scattered in my car and in my gear and all the different places that I store them. So, yeah, no, that's my bad. Yeah, I'm just kidding, by the way, not a big deal. Just, I finally put them away after my collection video, and I thought I wouldn't have to do this again for a while. So, anyways, that's enough moaning out of me. Just kind of killing time while I think about the next knife I'm going to take away, which is probably going to be the Luzon, because it doesn't really fit a category that this is going to be another knife out of. So it's not a beater knife. This is certainly one of the least rugged knives that I own. I bought it because it was just kind of fun, and I understood the Filipino martial arts reasons for, and I guess the Filipino background behind why they wanted to make this knife. So, you know, I threw Lynn Thompson a bone here and just said I'll pick up the medium version. The large one's a little bit aggressive again, because in Canada it just looks like a weapon, because it kind of, there's not a lot of justification. If a cop had to say, hey sir, I'm pulling you over, get out of your vehicle, I'm a pretty damn law-abiding citizen, but just saying that worst case scenario, something happened and a cop caught me with this and they kind of asked me questions, there's no getting around anything. So it's not something I carry because it's just not a problem I want to have to deal with. Yeah, we say goodbye to the cold steel medium Luzon. What about gentleman's carry though? Okay, no, maybe not. Okay. And I mean, okay, so let's just, let's do something simple here. I've got two more knives. Why? One's the stainless steel companion. One's the carbon steel companion. The stainless steel also has the serrations on it. This is what's basically on every fishing boat in all of, at least Atlantic Canada. I don't know about different fishing communities. It is the bang for your buck, best budget fixed blade you're going to be able to pick up. It'll last forever, and it costs like 15 bucks. But this is really there for the beater purpose, so you could say a budget EDC as well if you wanted to, but I'm not going to use that for that. I'm not a big fan of belt-carried vertical fixed blades for EDC, but we'll just say, like, hypothetically, I could carry these or the D.H. Russell #1 design here from Groman Knives. All of these three could be EDC, they could be beaters. This is going to be a pretty rugged knife, but not quite as rugged as these. If I had to pick one or the other, just knowing that I'm going to be in salty environments and that I might not always have oil on me, I'm tempted to go with the stainless, but you know what? A little bit of rust, as long as I'm using the knife on a regular basis, I could use whatever. You could use animal fat if you had to. I'm sure I'd be better off with this. You can create fire with the carbon. The carbon's going to be tougher and last longer and not chip less. Well, it will chip less than the stainless probably, but it's going to retain its edge better. That's what I'm looking for. Not a blade expert, by the way. More of a expert on beating the crap out of stuff and explaining to you what not to do. But we're going to get rid of the stainless steel version, I think, because out of the two of them, that's going to last the longest, and if I'm going to use it for a beater, that's going to be the best beater. Simple enough. I need to get a better sheath for that Mora knife, though, because these Mora sheaths are, I mean, you're not paying for the sheath, and if they put a more expensive sheath with it, you'd be paying extra for the knife, and the budget is, the value of the knife is what makes it so awesome. But yeah, you'd want to get a nicer sheath, or just put it in another sheath that fits these kind of fixed blades. So what do we got here? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 knives left. So out of these 10, is there anyone here that I can narrow down? Okay, so obviously, gentleman knives and safe queens are the things that I've got the least of, and really high-end knives. So let's pick those out right quick and figure that out. So why don't we right off the bat here just look at what my high-end EDC is going to be. This is basically between these two knives. Well, you could say the cold steel if you're depending on your high-end range. And well, I guess if we're saying that 75 US or 100 Canadian is the budget range, anything above that you would think would be your high-end EDC, right? High-end EDC. Ugh, say your words. So, Cold Steel Recon 1, the Benchmade 940-2, or the Manix 2 from Spyderco. And if you're wondering, I lost the left-hand pocket clip for the Recon 1. That's why you're seeing a little bit of funniness here. But, yeah, I guess the Manix 2 is really the one I'm going to pick for my high-end EDC because that's what I picked it for. I wanted one awesome mid-range EDC Foley knife that was going to last me hopefully forever and do pretty much anything I needed it to. So that's the one we're going to pick. So there's your first selection. The high-end EDC pick is the Manix 2. So now why don't we look at the gentleman's EDC. So your gentleman carry, gentleman's knife. I thought the term was kind of funny too because, I mean, I get it though. It's just more of like a fancy, you could say like a dress-up knife, like a knife that you would want to wear if you were going out to some kind of an event, or even if, like, let's say, yeah, like a wedding, or I was going to, yeah, I mean, that's about it, wedding or a funeral or something. I don't go to a lot of fancy events if you can get from my knife and EDC collection. Just kind of worried about my shit lasting if I'm running through the woods or running around. Even the house, I'm reckless enough breaking stuff. So, yeah, gentleman's EDC. Ooh, I guess the other thing, yeah, we could talk about maybe throwing the D.H. Russell Canadian belt knife type. Well, I guess that's Cold Steel makes the Canadian belt knife, the cheap version of that, if you want to check out a cheaper version to try this weird, different reverse curve blade style. But the Groman D.H. Russell belt knife here is, technically, you could get away with carrying this as a gentleman EDC because they do come in a very nicely finished leather sheath. So believe it or not, and I'm sure anyone who's from like say Texas or Oklahoma or something like that probably could relate to that, that you could get away, not even get away wearing something like this at a wedding or a funeral or even out to the grocery store. You'd actually kind of look like, well, seems like a respectable outdoorsman. A little too traditional for me, like I said, not really my jam, but it was a recommendation from my my manager at work, and I've seen these knives. I sharpened one for a buddy a couple years ago. They're pretty cool, but it's not going to fit the gentleman area. It's not going to fit my beater roll, because I know there's knives here they're going to beat it out for the beater roll. We'll take the D.H. Russell belt knife off the table. So I guess we are looking at these two for the gentleman carry, maybe. And this is hilarious, isn't it? Like, you'd be laughing, I guess, and most of you who have nice knife collections would be laughing at the Rat number 2 in this Coyote Brown as a gentleman's carry. But again, in a rural area where I'm not going to be in a big city galas or bars or anything like that, I swear, if you catch me in one of those places, I'm not there of my own free will, and you better save me. But this is actually kind of one of the more presentable knives that I own. So I'd stick that in the shirt pocket of like a button shirt or something like that, perhaps. But I think obviously the Benchmade 940-2 is going to be the pick. Number 1, that's kind of one of the reasons it was designed. And Warren Osborne, the Australian rancher living in Texas who designed this knife, did I get that right? He designed this to be a hard use, lightweight, compact EDC workhorse that you could use on a ranch or outdoors for any kind of outdoor task, but still could walk into church after, I guess, or something like that, and tuck it into a suit pocket. So this is actually pretty slick, and it does look a little bit of a lint and loose thread. Yeah, this is going to be not looking super pretty for too long, because I'm sure over the years I'll beat this up, but this would be my fancy dress-up knife. So gentleman's EDC picked. So let's just leave this slot open for those selections. So what do we need right now? We need a beater, budget EDC. We've got our higher end production EDC, which some people would say, oh, it's not a higher end EDC, that's kind of mid low end. Well, for me, paying $170 for a folding knife is a pretty big deal. Paying $225 for a folding knife, it hurt a little bit. So yeah, this for me is a high end EDC. That's my fancy dress up knife. So how about my budget EDC? So we've got a few things here, and I guess the other thing I could have said for high-end EDC, technically the Esee Izula II would have fit in there, but we're going to save maybe that for the beater conversation, as you might have guessed. So budget EDC. Now you're going to see a couple things here. So we've got, I guess, your Mora Companion. You've got the Rat number 2 from Ontario Knife Company. And we've got the Bird and Game from Cold Steel, fixed blade. So let's put fixed blade and fixed blade. And then, yeah, Rat. And then this is a Taiwan-made? Yep, Taiwan-made stainless steel Buck 110 knockoff. So the Buck 110s aren't really my type of knife. And I've had this one. This is a hand-me-down from my dad. Oh, and I did find out after the collection video, his mother got, I believe, him and each of the boys in the family one of these knives. So it has 2 eagles on that came on the side. The glue's obviously worn off. This knife is now probably, what, 40, 50 years old or something like that. So it's got a little bit of time in my pocket in high school, plus however much time it got used back in the day. But that would be technically a budget EDC. But as you might have guessed, this is more of a sentimental value type knife. The materials aren't super great as far as like hard use compared to a lot of the modern stuff you can buy nowadays. So this is not going to fit in the budget EDC conversation, but we're going to keep this around for the safe, clean conversation. Because again, like I said, don't have a lot of fancy $600 knives kicking around that I'm not going to use, because I don't want to spend $600 on a knife, or even $300 or $400. And if I did, it would be something I would most certainly use, like really, like say, one of the more rugged Cold Steels that are getting up into the $200, $300, $400 price range. Ooh, even a Shaman I think is going to cost me closer to like 300 Canadian, but that's a beautiful, awesome hard use Spyderco that I'm looking to get my hands on. Put that up there for now. Okay. I know why this is an issue. It's because this is kind of in between some selections for some other stuff. So I'm going to come back to the budget EDC selection, and we'll just table that conversation for now. And we're going to pick the beater knife out, because that's going to help me make that decision. So for a beater knife, so again, we've got those 2 knives picked out. So what we're looking at now, we'll just tuck this here. This is a safe, clean conversation. So we're looking for a beater knife at either the USMC 1211 from K-Bar, the Esee Izula II, or the Recon 1 from Gold Steel. This has certainly been beat on more than anything else number 2 position goes to this, and I say the Esee Izula and the Manix 2 are going to be catching up real quick. But this Moore knife, as you can tell, has hardly been used. I bought this just for an extra one to keep in my car. They're around fishing boats. They're around farms. There's one at the office that on the rack will be used for like dissecting and checking animals for different stuff. So yeah, they're popular knives all over the world. Very quality, good value. For a beater knife, you can't get much better. But I don't really like the sheath. I don't really like vertical carry. You could make a scout carry knife for this, but if you did, it's a little too large. If I was going to have a scout carry knife that size, I'd like something more like a Bradford Guardian 3.5. So we're going to take this out of the mix for the beater knife. So beater knife, Recon 1, it's a beater knife. There's no doubt about it. This has been a beater knife, as you can tell. But between this and 2 fixed blades, let's be realistic. It's just not going to be able to hold up, especially now that it's actually got some blade play. It's not going to hold up to what these ones are going to hold up to, so that's no longer in the mix for a beater knife. So here we go. These two. Obvious choice, right? I mean, for me at least, I think the reason I bought the Izula II is because I'm so used to carrying large fixed blades. There's not a lot of use for big-ass fixed blades like this unless you live in Australia or you're out in the Amazon or Alaska or something, but it's not something I'm going to be carrying on a regular basis. So it's a woods knife. I still use it all the time. I still carry it in my vehicle or in my kind of carry day bag, my man purse or whatever you want to call it, just a drawstring or Under Armour bag. But throw that in there just because there are many times when I'm going in the woods and I might have forgot to pack, say, a larger blade. And that's kind of the way I've learned to run my gear. I've got things everywhere where I won't really have to worry about always carrying certain stuff on me. I got my EDC knives on me, but I pretty much always got this somewheres near my person, so if I ever need a larger fixed blade, it's around, and it's for woods tasks and stuff. I'm not talking crazy shit, but if an apocalypse ever went down and I had to have an extra knife, this isn't a bad one to have. But too big for these purposes, so we're going to take it out of the mix for the final 5. So we've got our beater knife, Esee Izula number 2. When looking at this table, there's a lot of beater knives that we could have picked, but this was really the obvious choice for me from the beginning. We can stick that in the, oops, I know people freak out, just bear with me. I don't really care if I nick my knife, and if the edge gets worn down, I like sharpening, so I know I should be more gentle with my stuff, but that's what the channel's for, so you can take advantage of my stupidity. So let's fill that budget EDC slot. Okay, so not you. So that means these two here are safe queens for the conversation, at least, are the budget Taiwanese knockoff Buck 110 that I got from my father, that he got from his mother for the sentimental value. And yeah, the Recon one's actually one that I kind of considered heavily as a safe queen. This was the first knife that I spent a lot of time on YouTube checking out the reviews, and when I first kind of got into, you could say, higher end or at least medium end knives. So the Recon 1 to me is my introduction to the knife world, and it really is something that I have used extensively for a lot of different jobs throughout the years. So safe queen conversation, budget EDC conversation, and then we'll fill these final 2 slots. So okay, let's take the rat number 2 out of here, because I do not think, compared to the fixed blades, again, where I've got 2 nice folders in the mix already, the rat number 2 just doesn't really fit that for me. So it could be in there, and it was what I originally selected for my budget EDC slot, but I'm going to pick a fixed blade. We're going to take that out of here. So I guess my dilemma with the Moore Companion, selecting it for the budget EDC, was just kind of, it's the in-between of a big-ass beater knife that I would want to use and a smaller EDC fixed blade. So if this is going to be my budget EDC and I'm going to pick a fixed blade, I've just already got kind of those other things taken care of, I think, with the Esee Izula and the Manix 2 as far as what I would use this for. It's just a little too big. So really, I think the reason that the Cold Steel Bird Game, which is just a $35, something around those lines, $40 Canadian, cheap, skeletal, very minimal. It's got a little bit of a, I guess, kind of a rubber or plastic handle. I got to do a thorough review on this, and I'll check the specs on everything, but it's small, super, super light. This thing can't weigh more than, maybe an ounce. I'll pop it up here somewhere in a corner, but this is very, very slick. And this little tiny sheath, you can neck knife it. I'm not much of a neck knife guy, but this stays up in my car visor just for an emergency seatbelt cutter / coyote attack defense knife or whatever. This thing here, for as light and small small as it is, for the versatility this has if I wanted to throw this on my neck if I was going for a run or something up doing trails, which I'm not much of, I don't do that shit a lot, but you know, I'm just thinking of different things that I do once in a while where I would want to carry different knives and I might not want a folding knife and I might not want a heavier fixed blade. I think maybe the neck knife would be a good option. I gotta pick up a CRKT Minimalist sometime soon. Maybe that would take the place of this. Maybe we'll do a comparison video of that in the future. But yeah, we'll say EDC, budget EDC knife is going to go to the Cold Steel Bird and Game. So here, I'll help you out, give you a little something to look at and actually open these up here. So there's 4, and now we just need to pick the Safe Queen. So we're looking at the 110 knockoff or the Recon 1. Which one of these two for the Safe Queen? So this is actually kind of a tricky issue, and I don't actually have an answer for this yet. So I guess initially I thought, well, my Safe Queen would be the Recon 1. And then I remembered, oh, I've got this too. So if I really had to pick, if you made me get rid of all my knives and I had to make a decision based on something I was going to keep, I can't get rid of the Recon 1. That knife's going to be with me forever just because I need to look back at that and say, wow, that was a bit much. 50% combo serration is a little bit ridiculous for most of my everyday uses. There was just so many lessons learned from this knife, and so many, I mean, I lost this knife a couple times for long periods of time. I accidentally brought this into customs in Edmonton Airport when I was coming back from a fire export in Alberta rather. So I had to pay whatever 30, some ridiculous amount of money to ship this back from the customs booth because I was about to go through the metal detector and I was reaching in my pocket and I said, oh, I'm an idiot. And anyways, there's a lot of stories with this knife. My roommate picked up the same exact one with a non-combo edge. He was much smarter than me apparently, and there's too much attachment to this knife for me to really consider ever getting rid of it. So and then this one, same thing. Now this is cheap, and to be honest, if I used this the way that I use my knives now, it wouldn't last 5 minutes. I'd snap the blade in half for sure. But again, it's one of those weird things where this was not the very first knife. This is my second knife technically. I had a cheap Swiss Army knife before that, but this is my first folding knife. This is my first knife that I really carried around as a person who, well, as a kid I didn't carry that Swiss Army knife around. It was just kicking around if I wanted to play with it. Or this has a little bit more of that first knife feel to me. Plus, again, it's just one of those weird things. And I'm not a super sentimental guy, and I've got other little tidbits and things that I've collected and kept hold of over the years. But for the most part, the reason I'm holding on to this is because it was given to me by my dad, and I knew there was some attachment to it. Now that I do know that it was in fact given to him by his mother, and I think my dad's brother and maybe his uncles also got the same knife. So again, it's just one of those weird little things where in 50 years I can maybe look back and say, huh, I kind of remember the story behind that, and get caught down that nostalgic rabbit trail for whatever reason. Boo, yeah, sorry, rambling because I don't know what to do here. I'm going to say, based on practicality of materials and the fact that we're talking a knife channel with knife people here, I'm going to make the selfish decision to say I'm going to keep my first really big decision knife just for the sake of, as a knife collector, that's, I guess, more of the Safe Queen value. The Safe Queen is going to be the Recon 1 Sorry Buck 110 knockoff. I'm going to put you back here, but to be honest, if I did select all these, I'd probably find a way to smuggle this in somehow and make it work and make this a 6th. But if you want the answer, the real one, I guess this is what you're looking at. This is going to be the final 5 for the Hard On Gear channel. Nothing too fancy. I guess you could say we've got a few of my more expensive knives here for sure. If you want to see like kind of why I got this whole thing up and running, it really was in the selecting of these new EDC knives, so check that video out and keep an eye out for all the different stuff coming up in the future. Keep an eye out for the updated version of this final 5 video once I get a more extravagant knife collection as I upgrade my selection and collection as the channel grows. So if you want to help the channel out, just hit the subscribe button down below. Once I get to 1,000 subscribers, I'll be doing a knife giveaway of some kind of a hard use folding knife, something along the lines of, or I guess a folding knife or a fixed blade. Could be something like the Manix 2, a Cold Steel Recon 1, an Esee Izula II, something in that $100 to $200 price range. So keep an eye out for that. If you're looking at purchasing any of these knives, check out the links below and support the channel through the affiliate links that way. And again, thanks to Metal Complex for putting the open tag out there to allow other people to make this video without feeling like we're stealing his idea. So yeah, shout out to him. Check out his videos if you're into higher end knives. Pretty cool channel. Seems like a pretty good dude. Check out him and his channel and all of his different content he's got out there. Yeah, so for now, I guess this will be the Hard On Gear channel. Final 5, signing off.